I also want to second what Dr. Halbert was saying. I've noticed kind of a bias with more traditional scholarly information and the need to preserve that. Video games or some form of entertainment, which is also perhaps one of our work or observation.
Some people in the audience may have been in the NDSA or the NDIP programs, the various extended NDIP programs over the 10 years of that effort that Library of Congress led. And I'm also reminded of some of their discussions that, well, if we can't preserve anything, maybe we do samplings of typical bodies of information from various literatures that were perhaps ephemeral. So we we have maybe enough bits of them to study, to get a sense of what was happening in that particular discussion. If we can't preserve it all, then, just doing, again, to the point of doing something is better than nothing. And, maybe some periodic, that's also obviously what the Internet Archive does. They don't preserve the entire web in perpetuity. They do snapshots, periodic snapshots of subsets of the web, So, maybe just getting more into that mindset and also being a little proactive to get started. And even if we have to crawl before we walk, well, let's start crawling.
I hate it when these discussions end and everyone's just so depressed. They all have their heads down and like immobilized. So, I think you're right. We have to look forward, but we also have to look backward and make sure we're not, forgetting about all the stuff that we don't yet have in that's your old publication. But we also have to look sideways, as you said, into the not new kinds of content, but kinds of stuff like newsletters and posters that have never really been collected. It's like we have to look in all directions and figure out as a community how we're going to make some progress. And I think one of the best comments is really, it's better to do something. And we can get paralyzed by saying, oh my God, how can we do all of this? But we have to look in all directions. And I think, I say it again, look to who knows how to do things really well, even if it's not what you know how to do really well, and be willing to share the responsibility and the credit for doing this work.
Don't you think also, to end on turn it around on a positive note, the bar is set so low that anything we do is a success, in some ways, that...
just by coming to the office in the morning, right? We're doing something, right? No, I know what you mean. There's so much stuff, as, bless them, Oya Rieger and Bob Wolven continue to point out, there's so much stuff that is not yet in anything, in any preservation service that, I take that as sometimes a slap on the wrist. Like, what are you talking about looking at all this new kind of scholarly communication? Just get the darn journals into a preservation service. Then we'll talk about the next thing. So you're right. Even if we just kept working on that stuff, that would be doing a lot. It's just that I don't think we can take our eyes off what's coming down the pipe.
Did you want to make any final summative comments from anything you've taken away from this, hopefully not completely dismal conversation?
Talking too much.
I feel like we've come full circle and have addressed the main things that we wanted to talk about, which was just that there's this constant tension that's going to exist between wanting to innovate and wanting to support innovation on the part of libraries and other open access publishers, other scholarly publishers, and the need to be responsible stewards of that content that we produce. And I think we need to carefully examine our motivations, I think, as we're working in this area. Why is it that libraries are involved in publishing? Is it to push the boundaries and make available the most innovative and boundary pushing scholarship that's out there, and is that our niche? Is that what our scholars need from us, and is that the way that we can make the greatest impact on the scholarly communication system? Or is it offering a generic but extremely scalable system for publishing journals that allows faculty to publish open access and really distribute huge amounts of high quality scholarly communication in an open access manner, but that doesn't have the capability to support really cool and innovative functionality. And I don't think it's necessarily an either-or proposition, and there's certainly a spectrum, and it's not necessarily the same answer for every library or every type of library. But I think libraries will be increasingly reflecting on what impact they want to make on the scholarly communication system and what impact they're best positioned to make.
I'll just say briefly that my impression is that there's, well, this meeting among others, and the Library Publishing Coalition especially, there's a lot more crossover happening between libraries and publishers and scholars, really, in a less institutional way, that it can only be good here, right? That it isn't just, the publishers have their conference and every year they have one panel of librarians who are going to come tell them what librarians think, right? That we're all getting together and we're trying to talk through these problems, work through them together, and especially having hybrid organizations like libraries doing publishing and such, right? That it's really just fertile ground to work out these complicated things. So I think that's what makes me optimistic for the future here.
The same goes for bringing a preservation perspective into a publishing panel discussion, which isn't normally done. And I actually think that's really helpful because preservation organizations and services should hear about the problems and the issues as they're being discussed, not when it's facing them at the tail end of it, when it just needs to be dealt with in an urgent manner. So I think it's, for all of these reasons, it's great to have kind of a discussion, and I think done again in other forum.
Well, then, please join me in thanking our panelists for a great discussion. And we will reconvene at 4:15 for our next panel, last panel of the day.